Review Session 5, Price Elasticity and Consumer and Producer Surpluses. Okay, so elasticity. By definition, this just means responsiveness. How responsive people are. Think of a rubber band. If it's an elastic rubber band, it moves a lot. There's a lot of action. So if the demand for something is elastic, that means people are doing something a lot. So the equation is the percentage change over quantity, so the amount that you buy, over the percentage change in the price. So later we'll talk about the equations. If that value is greater than 1, it's called elastic. Well, that makes sense. Point to the equation. If it's greater than 1, the numerator has to be greater. So quantity demanded has to be greater than the price change percentage in order for the fraction to be over 1. So if Q is the person's action and it's greater than the price change, then the person is being more dramatic. I'm using simplified language here, but the person is acting more than the price is moving. So it's elastic, right? They're responding very much to a price change. If the price change is greater, so if you put your pen at the P, if that change is greater, then people aren't reacting as much, so it would be inelastic. So the different kinds of elasticity that we will look at are, point to the ED up there, elasticity of demand. We know that people change their buying patterns based on price, but by how much? Point to EI, that's elasticity of income. How does your income affect which goods you buy? If I make double my salary, I'm probably not going to buy different amounts of milk. I need that on a constant basis. So anyway, we'll talk more about that later. Elasticity of supply. How do price changes affect whether suppliers want to make a good? And then EXY is cross elasticity. So label that. If you hear or see the AP test say cross elasticity, they're talking about this variable, EXY. Okay, so we're at Roman numeral 1. You didn't have to write anything next to those, the list of 4 kinds of elasticity other than ED. Income elasticity was EI, ES, and EXY. Okay, so Roman numeral 1, price elasticity. 2 ways to find out if something is elastic or inelastic in terms of demand. So price of goods change. How do people stop or continue buying them? And the 2 ways are the midpoint formula and the total revenue test. Looking back at your sheet, the midpoint formula is calculating percentage change in quantity, write that, over percentage change in price. So you can use the midpoint formula to calculate that, and if ED is greater than 1, it's elastic. If it's less than 1, it's inelastic. And if it equals 1, it's unit elastic. That means it doesn't really matter. What if you hike up the prices by 10%, people are going to respond in buying patterns by 10%, and it didn't really matter. Now looking at the graph here, draw perfectly inelastic. That is the graph to the left. Jot that down. It says what an excise tax is levied on a good that's perfectly inelastic demand. Who has the burden of the tax? Well, let's think of an example. You look at the graph, it's saying that the quantity demanded will be the same no matter what the price is. Point to that on your graph. An example would be like insulin. No matter what the price is, if someone needs insulin to survive, they're going to buy it. So it's perfectly inelastic, the demand is. So if there is any kind of tax levied, it's not the producers that feel like they have to pay it. They'll shove it off into the consumer. So if you take your pen and make it upward sloping and intersect it with that demand curve to make it supply, shift the supply now to the left, the price is higher, but that whole price is going to be paid by the consumer. Perfectly elastic, point to the right graph. That's perfectly elastic. You can just use a dumb way to remember this. The inelastic looks like an I, straight up and down. Elastic almost looks like an E. The whole graph almost looks like an E if you had a top horizontal line of the E there, but maybe that'll help you remember. This is not realistic. You cannot have someone react infinitely. So this perfectly elastic is more of a theoretical. And if an excise tax, that means an excise tax is a tax on the supplier. If that's levied, the supplier is going to pay the whole burden of the tax, because what this is saying is that if price changes, people will infinitely change their the amount that they demand. Though that's more of a theoretical. We'll do way more with taxes, excise taxes, later in the next review session. Please note that the steeper the slope of a line, the more inelastic it is. So it's like a range, perfectly elastic to perfectly inelastic. It's a range. But slope and elasticity are not the same thing, because we know one line can have different elasticities, which we'll see later here. But if you look at this slide, the left graph is perfectly inelastic, and then it gets a little less steep, and then not steep at all. So it's going from inelastic to elastic. I should say perfectly inelastic to perfectly elastic. Okay, first prize clue. This type of dog is the type of dog what my dog, before she passed away, what she looked like as a puppy, and it is called a Bichon Frise. A Bichon Frise. Isn't she adorable? Okay, keep that in mind, a Bichon Frise. That brings us to the second way to decide if the demand for a good is elastic or inelastic. So I just said before that one line has different elasticities. And you can see that on this next series of graphs. Look at the top graph where it says demand. See if you can remember in the three segments of this demand curve. The left is, hopefully you said elastic. The middle is, hopefully you said unit elastic. And the third component is inelastic. We then look at the total revenue graph, which down below it says as you increase the price and quantity combinations that you're selling, for a while your total revenue goes up, and then it maintains the same, and then it actually goes down. Now, in each segment of the demand curve, as you move along the x-axis, price is doing what? It's going down, and you should have drawn this graph already by this time. So you have in the elastic region a little downward arrow, in the unit elastic a downward arrow, in elastic a downward arrow, because in each segment price is going down. But what about in total revenue? Total revenue, that first segment, what's happening to total revenue? It's going up. What's happening in the unit elastic portion? It's not changing. What's happening in the inelastic region? Total revenue is going down. So we can say our general rule then is when price and total revenue, put your pen on the elastic region, look at the arrows. When price and total revenue move in opposite directions, it's elastic. Move on to the inelastic part. If they move in the same direction, inelastic. And if TR doesn't change, it's unit elastic. To practice that and make sure that you understand it, what you need to do is get a blank piece of paper and draw those things out and come up with those rules, prove them to yourself.